Hello, beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you deepen in your relationship with the angels while you rest, relax, and hopefully fall asleep. If we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. I facilitate one-on-one angel sessions. I offer soul mentoring and also a variety of groups and classes designed to inspire your heart and bring more light into your life. And I also am someone who listens to sleep podcasts and have done so for several years. I find that they really enhance my self-care and provide a gateway for me to release the day that had been and drift off into a beautiful expanse of sleep. I love listening to soft and soothing voices read me a story and know that I don't have to track with the narrative, that I have permission to just drift off. And that's why I have created Sleepy Bedtime Blessings for you. You're going to get to experience a lovely whoosh of love from the angels. And then I'm going to read to you. So you cozy on up, snuggle on in to whatever your favorite sleeping place is. For me, I love to pile on the blankets. It's been chilly here at night, and that means I get to put a few extra blankets on me. Just my side of the bed because my husband doesn't need them. And last night I slept so deeply. It was awesome. And so I invite you to set up your perfect sleeping cocoon. Tonight, as I was contemplating what I was going to share with you, I was thinking about how I have been finding my way in creating this podcast. I don't have an audio engineering background, which probably doesn't come as any surprise to you. But over time, I've learned little bits and pieces. And so I have this blanket I throw over my monitor and my head. Have discovered that it helps to muffle the room noise. And I broadcast to you from a blanket fort. And I can't even tell you how much this delights me. It feels magical in here. And I just love that it's been created spontaneously. Feels like a blessing. And so tonight I just was guided to offer this concept up for you. What if there are still really cool, magical things for you to discover about yourself? You know, sometimes we think we have discovered all that we are already, but I really don't believe that's true. I believe that we are ever-evolving beings. And as we allow ourselves to connect with sparks of inspiration, they create the gateway for more of who we are to come online. I want to share with you a story of someone I once met. My husband and I had attended a New Age expo in Denver, Colorado one year. It was for New Age retailers. So there was a wide expanse of vendors there. And we visited this one booth with this woman. She was a little bit older. I would say she was in her 70s. And what she had were these long beaded necklaces. And she called them prayer shawls. They were extraordinary. They were many feet long, 4 or 6 feet long. And the beads on them, each one was unique. They were magical. I had never seen anything like that before. And I asked her about it. I said, "How did you come to this?" And she said that she didn't pick up a single bead until she retired. She had been working as an administrator in a hospital. And when she retired, she attended some sort of bead class, and she discovered her calling. And I always thought that was so cool, that she could discover something so exquisite about herself after retirement. And so I've always held that as an intention, that I will continue to discover beautiful things about my own abilities and gifts, that I will always connect with inspiration, and that all that I am has yet to be revealed. And if that is true for me, that is true for you too. I did not open to my gifts with the angels until I was in my 40s. I have rediscovered parts of myself across the years. And I love this idea that we are very much like the plant kingdom in some ways, If you've ever had a house plant, and the leaves just know how to turn towards the light and grow. And if you turn the house plant, the leaves pivot and grow towards the light. We are the same way when we give ourselves the opportunity to grow towards the light. So I offer up that if you are listening to this message, there are beautiful experiences that are still here for you to discover about yourself and the world. You are a timeless and wise being. You have not just come here to do laundry and make meals and work a muggle job. You have come here to experience not only the beauty of the world, but the beauty of you. And so I invite you to take a deep breath in and connect with the beauty in your soul. And I'm going to call in the angels to be with us now. They're already here. I can feel their enthusiasm for you. So take a deep breath in and out. And beautiful angels on high. It is such a blessing to invite you to join us here. I already feel your presence and the love you are bringing forward for us all. Angels, I ask that you cultivate a beautiful sense of sanctuary here. That for each of the beloveds listening to this message, that they feel the love and sense of sanctuary you are bringing to them. Angels, we ask that you clear anything that is not ours, perhaps even helping to clear any old patterns or paradigms that no longer serve us, and infuse us with divine light that helps us remember even more of who we are as divine beings in human form. Angels, help us open to the brightness of our spirits. May our paths be blessed with grace. May each of us receive healing in a way that will serve our highest and best good. May we be comforted, and we ask that you create a buffer of angelic light so that as we go about day-to-day living, that we walk through this world with a shield of divine light. Angels, we are so grateful for this time together. And so, dear ones, just breathe and allow yourself to receive the love that is here for you. If you are willing, the angels will help to clear your burdens from you. Just give your burdens over to the angels, and they will help transform them in a way that brings more grace to your experiences. And just breathe. And if you have any prayers or requests you would like to make of the angels, we invite you to go into your heart and share them silently. And your angels will receive them from you. And while you rest, the angels will tend to your vibration. You know, we are vibrational beings. And perhaps that's not something you get to talk about in your day-to-day life. But here and now we can acknowledge this truth. So the angels are creating a beautiful, loving, restful space for you to rest. You do so much during the day. You hold the love for so many. Even if you don't know it, you do. And you're doing such a good job in this world. Again, even if you're not aware of it, you are. And this is the time to let the angels take care of you. This is your time to be cherished. and to be supported and to be seen through the eyes of love. And if you're willing, we can also ask the angels to help you open to more of your magic and creative spirit. That perhaps there's a new gift or ability that is ready to come online for you in the coming days or weeks or months. Who knows, maybe you'll create a podcast too. Or maybe you'll start growing heirloom tomatoes. Or knitting blankets for shelter dogs. There are so many creative and awesome ways to use our life force in this world. I affirm that you get to reclaim some of your life force so that you can use it in a way that brings you deep, abiding fulfillment and joy. And your angels will help you with this. We don't always need to know our destinations. Sometimes it's enough to just close our eyes and take a breath and say, what is an inspired step forward I can take right now? And it can be the smallest of steps. They don't all have to be big and grand. Just the smallest increment of movement sometimes creates waves in response. So take a deep breath in and out and know that the angels have your back, that what you are seeking to cultivate and create is already being energized. You are cultivating and co-creating in a multi-dimensional universe. And not everything moves during waking hours. There is a lot of movement in the unseen and unknown in the most wonderful of ways. So I'm going to take a deep breath with you and feel the waves of light and love that are here for you now. And so you rest, and while you rest, the angels will watch over you, and I'm going to read you a story. So tonight I'm going to read to you the 4th installment of the book A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. As I have shared before, this was one of my favorite books growing up. And we're going to shift a little bit in how I share the story with you for this installment, because the story takes a really sad turn. So to catch you up, Sarah Crew is a very fortunate young girl in that she is beloved by her papa, Captain Crew. And she grew up in India with him, but during this time, the early 1900s, it was customary for children to be sent back to London to go to boarding school. And so Captain Crew takes Sarah to Miss Minchin's seminary for young women. Now he's very wealthy and dashing, and makes sure that Sarah has the best of everything. And the sweet thing about Sarah is this doesn't get in her head. She's not snobbish or doesn't feel privileged, other than she's grateful for what she has and is very willing to share. She also has a massively beautiful imagination. And so she's known for her stories and her imagination, her kindness, and her generosity. And she has even forged a special friendship with Becky, the scullery maid, who typically everybody ignores, who has a very hard life. So at this point in the story, we have discovered that Captain Crew has invested in diamond mines, but he's very concerned about them because he doesn't really have a head for business. And it's Sarah's 11th birthday party. And upon Captain Crew's instruction, Miss Minchin has spared no expense. She has ordered a new doll from Paris that is to have the finest of clothing. And everyone is assembled for this very extravagant birthday party to celebrate Sarah. And then Captain Crew's solicitors show up to speak with Miss Minchin. And they come bearing truly awful news. Captain Crew has died, and he has been financially wiped out because the diamond mines had not come to fruition. And Miss Minchin is horrified because she has spent extravagantly on behalf of Captain Crew. And now there is this penniless child under her care. Her first instinct is to throw her onto the street. But the solicitor said, "That will not look good for you. She's yours now." And the thing about this time period of the early 1900s is it was a time where conditions were very harsh for orphan children. The workhouses still existed, if you remember the story Oliver Twist or the movie Oliver. And so Miss Minchin has her sister Amelia break the news to Sarah. And they dress Sarah in her plainest dress and moves her into a tiny room in the attic next to Becky. Now, normally I wouldn't read something that is this sad on this podcast. But you know what I found interesting as I was contemplating this is this story did not trouble me when I was a little girl. And I think often in children's literature, something happens to the parents and the child is left on their own. And again, as a child, this did not disturb my peace. I don't know, maybe I just knew that it was a story. You know, as an adult, of course, I want to rush in and scoop up Sarah and save her and love her. Because, you know, real life and all that. But when I was reading this as a fictional book as a child, I don't know why it didn't trouble me. Maybe because I was blessed enough to feel safe and knew that this was just a story. So, here we are with Sarah. She has just had a profound change of fortune. One of the things I love so much about this story, I think, though, is no matter whether she was wealthy or poor, she was always still Sarah. She was always generous and told wonderful stories and lived in her imagination and saw the best in every circumstance. And perhaps that's what I always got out of this story. So now here we are, where all of this has transpired. When she went down to breakfast, she saw that her seat at Miss Minchin's side was occupied by Lavinia and Miss Minchin spoke to her coldly. "You will begin your new duty, Sarah," she said, "by taking your seat with the younger children at a smaller table. You must keep them quiet and see that they behave well and do not waste their food. You ought to have been down earlier. Lottie has already upset her tea." That was the beginning, and from day to day the duties given to her were added to. She taught the younger children French and heard their other lessons, and these were the least of her labors. It was found that she could be made use of in numberless directions. She could be sent on errands at any time and in all weathers. She could be told to do things other people neglected. The cook and the housemaids took their tone from Miss Minchin and rather enjoyed ordering around the young one who had been made so much a fuss over for so long. They were not servants of the best class and had neither good manners nor good tempers, and it was frequently convenient to have at hand someone on whom the blame could be laid. During the first month or two, Sarah thought her willingness to do things as well as she could, and her silence under reproof, might soften those who drove her so hard. In her proud little heart, she wanted them to see that she was trying to earn her living and not accepting charity. But the time came when she saw that no one was softened at all, and the more willing she was to do as she was told, the more domineering and exacting careless housemaids became, and the more ready a scolding cook was to blame her. If she had been older, Miss Minchin would have given her the bigger girls to teach and saved money by dismissing an instructress. But while she remained and looked like a child, she could be made more useful as a sort of little superior errand girl and maid of all work. An ordinary errand boy would not have been so clever and reliable. Sarah could be trusted with difficult commissions and complicated messages. She could even go and pay bills, and she combined with this the ability to dust a room well and to set all things in order. Her own lessons became things of the past. She was taught nothing, and only after long and busy days spent in running here and there at everybody's orders was she grudgingly allowed to go into the deserted schoolroom with a pile of old books and study alone at night. If I do not remind myself of the things I have learned, perhaps I may forget them, she said to herself. I am almost a scullery maid, and if I am a scullery maid who knows nothing, I shall be quite like poor Becky. I wonder if I could quite forget and begin to drop my H's and not remember that Henry VIII has 6 wives. Of the most curious things in her new existence was her changed position among the pupils. Instead of being a sort of small royal personage among them, she no longer seemed to be one of their number at all. She was kept so constantly at work that she scarcely ever had an opportunity of speaking to any of them, and she could not avoid seeing that Miss Minchin preferred that she should live a life apart from that of the occupants of the schoolroom. I will not have her forming intimacies and talking to the other children, that lady said. Girls like a grievance, and if she begins to tell romantic stories about herself, she will become an ill-used heroine, and parents will be given a wrong impression. It is better that she should live a separate life, one suited to her circumstances. I am giving her a home, and that is more than she has any right to expect from me. Sarah did not expect much, and was far too proud to try and continue to be intimate with girls who evidently felt rather awkward and uncertain about her. The fact was, Miss Minchin's pupils were a set of dull, matter-of-fact young people. They were accustomed to being rich and comfortable, and as Sarah's frocks grew shorter and shabbier and queerer looking, it became an established fact that she wore shoes with holes in them, and was sent out to buy groceries and carry them through the streets in a basket on her arm, when the cook wanted them in a hurry. They felt rather as if, when they spoke to her, they were addressing an underservant. To think that she was the girl with the diamond mines, Lavinia commented. She does look an object, and she's queerer than ever. I never liked her much, but I can't bear that way she has of now looking at people without speaking, just as if she was finding them out. I am, said Sarah promptly when she heard of this. That's what I look at some people for. I like to know about them. I think of them afterward. The truth was, she had saved herself annoyance several times by keeping her eye on Lavinia, who was quite ready to make mischief, and would have been rather pleased to have made it for the ex-show pupil. Sarah never made any mischief herself, or interfered with anyone. She worked like a drudge. She tramped through the wet streets carrying parcels and baskets. She labored with the childish inattention of the little one's French lessons. As she became shabbier and more forlorn-looking, she was told that she had better take her meals downstairs. She was treated as if she was nobody's concern, and her heart grew proud and sore, but she never told anyone what she felt. Soldiers don't complain, she would say between her small shut teeth. I am not going to do it. I will pretend this is part of a war. But there were hours when her child heart might almost have broken with loneliness but for 3 people. The first, it must be owned, was Becky, just Becky. Throughout all that first night spent in the garret, she had felt a vague comfort in knowing that on the other side of the wall in which the rats scuffled and squeaked, there was another young human creature, and during the nights that followed, the sense of comfort grew. They had little chance to speak to each other during the day. Each had her own tasks to perform, and any attempt at conversation would have been regarded as a tendency to loiter and lose time. Don't mind me, miss, Becky whispered during the first morning, if I don't say nothing polite. Some'd be down on us if I did. I mean please and thank you and beg pardon, but I don't take time to say it. But before daybreak, she used to slip into Sarah's attic and button her dress and give her such help as she required before she went downstairs to light the kitchen fire. And when night came, Sarah always heard the humble knock at her door, which meant that her handmaid was ready to help her again if she was needed. During the first weeks of her grief, Sarah felt as if she were too stupefied to talk, so it happened that some time passed before they saw each other or managed to exchange visits. Becky's heart told her that it was best that people in trouble should be left alone. The second of the trio of comforters were Ermengarde, but odd things happened before Ermengarde found her place. When Sarah's mind seemed to awaken again to the life about her, she realized she had forgotten that Ermengarde lived in the world. The two had always been friends, but Sarah had felt as if she were years the older. It could not be contested that Ermengarde was as dull as she was affectionate. She clung to Sarah in simple, helpless ways. She brought her lessons to her that she might be helped. She listened to her every word and besieged her with requests for stories. But she had nothing interesting to say herself, and she loathed books of every description. She was, in fact, not a person one would remember when one caught in the storm of great trouble, and Sarah forgot her. It had been all the easier to forget her because she had been suddenly called home for a few weeks. When she came back, she did not see Sarah for a day or two, and when she met her for the first time, she encountered her coming down the stairs with her arms full of garments, which were to be taken downstairs to be mended. Sarah herself had already been taught to mend them. She looked pale and unlike herself, and she was attired in the queer outgrown frock whose shortness showed so much thin black leg. Ermengarde was too slow a girl to be equal to such a situation. She could not think of anything to say. She knew what had happened, but somehow she had never imagined Sarah could look like this, so odd and poor and almost like a servant. It made her quite miserable, and she could do nothing but break into a short hysterical laugh and exclaim aimlessly, and as if without any meaning, "Oh, Sarah, is that you?" "Yes," answered Sarah, and suddenly a strange thought passed through her mind and made her face flush. She held the pile of garments in her arms, and her chin rested upon the top of it to keep it steady. Something in the look of her straight-gazing eyes made Ermengarde lose her wits still more. She felt as if Sarah had changed into a new kind of girl, and she had never known her before. Perhaps it was because she had suddenly grown poor and had to mend things and work like Becky. "Oh," she stammered, "how are you?" "I don't know," Sarah replied. "How are you?" I'm quite well," said Ermengarde, overwhelmed with shyness. Then spasmodically she thought of something to say which seemed more intimate. Are you very unhappy?" she said in a rush. Then Sarah was guilty of an injustice. Just at that moment, her torn heart swelled within her, and she felt that if anyone was as stupid as that, one had better get away from her. "What do you think?" she said. "Do you think I am very happy?" And she marched past her without another word. In course of time, she realized that if her wretchedness had not made her forget things, she would have known that poor, dull Ermengarde was not to be blamed for her unready, awkward ways. She was always awkward, and the more she felt, the more stupid she was given to being. But the sudden thought which had flashed upon her had made her oversensitive. She is like the others, she had thought. She does not really want to talk to me. She knows no one does. So for several weeks a barrier stood between them. When they met by chance, Sarah looked the other way, and Ermengarde felt too stiff and embarrassed to speak. Sometimes they nodded to each other in passing, but there were times when they did not even exchange a greeting. If she would rather not talk to me, Sarah thought, I will keep out of her way. Miss Minchin makes that easy enough. Miss Minchin made it so easy that at last they scarcely saw each other at all. At that time it was noticed that Ermengarde was more stupid than ever, and she looked listless and unhappy. She used to sit in the window seat huddled in a heap and stared out of the window without speaking. Once Jessie, who was passing, stopped to look at her curiously. "What are you crying for, Ermengarde?" she asked. "I am not crying," answered Ermengarde in a muffled, unsteady voice. "You are," said Jessie. "A great big tear just rolled down the bridge of your nose and dropped off at the end of it, and there goes another." "Well," said Ermengarde, "I am miserable, and no one need interfere." And she turned her plump back and took out her handkerchief and boldly hid her face in it. That night, when Sarah went to her attic, she was later than usual. She had been kept at work until after the hour of which the pupils went to bed, and after that she had gone to her lessons in the lonely schoolroom. When she reached the top of the stairs, she was surprised to see a glimmer of light coming from under the attic door. "Nobody goes in there but myself," she thought quickly, "but someone has lit a candle." Someone had indeed lit a candle, and it was not burning in the kitchen candlestick she was expected to use, but in one of those belonging to the pupils' bedrooms. The someone was sitting upon the battered footstool and was dressed in her nightgown and wrapped up in a red shawl. It was Ermengarde. "Ermengarde," cried Sarah. She was so startled that she was almost frightened. "You will get into trouble." Ermengarde stumbled up from her footstool. She shuffled across the attic in her bedroom slippers, which were now too large for her. Her eyes and nose were pink with crying. "I know I shall if I am found out," she said, "but I don't care. I don't care a bit. Oh, Sarah, please tell me, what is the matter? Why don't you like me anymore?" Something in her voice made the familiar lump rise in Sarah's throat. It was so affectionate and simple, so like the old Ermengarde who had asked her to be best friends. It sounded as if she had not meant what she had seemed to mean during these past weeks. "I do like you," Sarah answered. "I thought you see, everything is different now. I thought you were different." Ermengarde opened her wet eyes wide. "Why, it was you who was different," she cried. "You didn't want to talk to me. I didn't know what to do. It was you who were different after I came back." Sarah thought a moment. She saw she had made a mistake. "I am different," she explained, "though not in the way you think. Miss Minchin does not want me to talk to the girls. Most of them don't want to talk to me. I thought perhaps you didn't, so I tried to keep out of your way." "Oh, Sarah," Ermengarde almost wailed in her reproachful dismay. And then after one more look, they rushed into each other's arms. It must be confessed that Sarah's small black head lay for some minutes on the shoulder covered by the red shawl. When Ermengarde had seemed to desert her, she had felt horribly lonely. Afterward, they sat down upon the floor together, Sarah clasping her knees with her arms, and Ermengarde rolled up in her shawl. Ermengarde looked at the odd, big-eyed little face adoringly. "I couldn't bear it any more," she said. "I dare say you could live without me, Sarah, but I couldn't live without you. I was nearly dead. So tonight, when I was crying under the bedclothes, I thought all at once of creeping up here and just begging you to let us be friends again." "You are nicer than I am," said Sarah. "I was too proud to try and make friends. You see, now that trials have come, they have shown that I am not a nice child. I was afraid they would, perhaps," wrinkling her forehead wisely. "That is what they were sent for." "I don't see any good in them," said Ermengarde stoutly. "Neither do I, to speak the truth," admitted Sarah frankly. "But I suppose there might be good in things, even if we don't see it. There might, doubtfully, be good in Miss Minchin." Ermengarde looked around the attic with a rather fearsome curiosity. "Sarah," she said, "do you think you can bear living here?" Sarah looked around also. "If I pretend it's quite different, I can," she answered. "Or if I pretend it is a place in a story." She spoke slowly. Her imagination was beginning to work for her. It had not worked for her at all since her troubles had come upon her. She had felt as if it had been stunned. Other people have lived in worse places. Think of the Count of Monte Cristo and the dungeons of the chateau, and I think of the people in the Bastille. "The Bastille," half-whispered Ermengarde, watching her and beginning to be fascinated. She remembered stories of the French Revolution, which Sarah had been able to fix in her mind by dramatic relation of them. No one but Sarah could have done it. A well-known glow came to Sarah's eyes. "Yes," she said, hugging her knees, "that will be a good place to pretend about. I am a prisoner in the Bastille. I have been here for years and years and years, and everybody has forgotten about me. Miss Minchin is the jailer, and Becky," a sudden light adding itself to the glow in her eyes, "Becky is the prisoner in the next cell." She turned to Ermengarde, looking quite like the old Sarah. "I shall pretend that," she said, "and it will be a great comfort." Ermengarde was at once enraptured and awed. "And will you tell me all about it?" she said. "May I creep up here at night whenever it is safe and hear the things you have made up in the day? It will seem as if we are more best friends than ever." "Yes," answered Sarah, nodding. "Adversity tries people, and mine has tried you and proved how nice you are." Chapter 9. Melchizedek. The third person in the trio was Lottie. She was a small thing and did not know what adversity meant, and was much bewildered by the alteration she saw in her young adopted mother. She had heard it rumored that strange things had happened to Sarah, but she could not understand why she looked different, why she wore an old black frock and came to the schoolroom only to teach instead of to sit in her place of honor and learn lessons herself. There had been much whispering among the little ones when it had been discovered that Sarah no longer lived in the rooms in which Emily had so long sat in estate. Lottie's chief difficulty was that Sarah said so little when one asked her questions. At 7 mysteries must be made very clear if one is to understand them. "Are you very poor now, Sarah?" she had asked confidently the first morning her friend took charge of the small French class. "Are you as poor as a beggar?" She thrust a fat hand into the slim one and opened round, tearful eyes. "I don't want you to be as poor as a beggar." She looked as if she was going to cry, and Sarah hurriedly consoled her. "Beggars have nowhere to live," she said courageously. "I have a place to live." "Where do you live?" persisted Lottie. "The new girl sleeps in your room, and it isn't pretty any more." "I live in another room," said Sarah. "Is it a nice one?" inquired Lottie. "I want to go and see it." "You must not talk," said Sarah. "Miss Minchin is looking at us. She will be angry with me for letting you whisper." She had found out already that she was to be held accountable for everything which was objected to. If the children were not attentive, if they talked, if they were restless, it was she who would be reproved. But Lottie was a determined little person. If Sarah would not tell her where she lived, she would find out in some other way. She talked to her small companions and hung about the elder girls and listened when they were gossiping. And acting upon certain information they had unconsciously let drop, she started late one afternoon on a voyage of discovery, climbing stairs she had never known the existence of until she reached the attic floor. There she found 2 doors near each other, and opening one, she saw her beloved Sarah standing upon an old table and looking out of a window. "Sarah," she cried aghast, "Mama, Sarah." She was aghast because the attic was so bare and ugly and seemed so far away from all the world. Her short legs had seemed to have been mounting hundreds of stairs. Sarah turned round at the sound of her voice. It was her turn to be aghast. What would happen now? If Lottie began to cry and anyone chanced to hear, they were both lost. She jumped down from her table and ran to the child. "Don't cry and make a noise," she implored. "I shall be scolded if you do, and I have been scolded all day. It's not such a bad room, Lottie." "Isn't it?" gasped Lottie, and as she looked round, she bit her lip. She was a spoiled child yet, but she was fond enough of her adopted parent to make an effort to control herself for her sake. Then somehow it was quite possible that any place in which Sarah lived might turn out to be nice. "Why isn't it, Sarah?" she almost whispered. Sarah hugged her close and tried to laugh. There was sort of comfort in the warmth of the plump, childish body. She had had a hard day and had been staring out the windows with hot eyes. "You can see all sorts of things you can't see downstairs," she said. What sorts of things? Demanded Lottie, with that curiosity Sarah could always awaken even in bigger girls. Chimneys quite close to us, with smoke curling up in wreaths and clouds and going up into the sky, and sparrows hopping about and talking to each other just as if they were people, and other attic windows where heads may pop out at any minute, and you can wonder who they belong to. And it all feels as high up as if it were in another world. "Oh, let me see it," cried Lottie. "Lift me up." Sarah lifted her up, and they stood on the old table together and leaned on the edge of the flat window in the roof and looked out. Anyone who has not done this does not know what a different world they saw. The slate spread out on either side of them and slanted down into the rain gutter pipes. The sparrows, being at home there, twittered and hopped about quite without fear. 2 of them perched on the chimney top nearest and quarreled with each other fiercely until one pecked the other and drove him away. The garret window next to theirs was shut because the house next door was empty. "I wish someone lived there," Sarah said. "It is so close that if there was a little girl in the attic, we could talk to each other through the window and climb over to see each other if we were not afraid of falling." The sky seemed so much nearer than when one saw it from the street that Lottie was enchanted. From the attic window, among the chimney pots, the things which were happening in the world below seemed almost unreal. One scarcely believed in the existence of Miss Minchin and Miss Amelia and the schoolroom, and the roll of wheels in the square seemed a sound belonging to another existence. "Oh, Sarah," cried Lottie, cuddling into her guarding arm. "I like this attic. I like it. It's nicer than downstairs." "Look at that sparrow," whispered Sarah. "I wish I had some crumbs to throw to him." "I have some," came in a little shriek from Lottie. "I have part of a bun in my pocket. I brought it with my penny yesterday and I saved a bit." When they threw out a few crumbs, the sparrow jumped and flew away into an adjacent chimney top. He was evidently not accustomed to intimates in attics, and unexpected crumbs startled him. But when Lottie remained quite still and Sarah chirped very softly, almost as if she were a sparrow herself, he saw that the thing which had alarmed him represented hospitality after all. He put his head on one side, and from his perch on the chimney looked down at the crumbs with twinkling eyes. Lottie could scarcely keep still. "Will he come? Will he come?" she whispered. "His eyes look as if he would," Sarah whispered back. "He is thinking and thinking whether he dare. Yes, he will. He's coming." He flew down and hopped towards the crumbs, but stopped a few inches away from them, putting his head on one side again, and then the other, as if reflecting on the chances that Sarah and Lottie might turn out to be big cats and jump on him. At last his heart told him that they were really nicer than they looked, and he hopped nearer and nearer, darted at the biggest crumb with a lightning peck, seized it, and carried it away to the other side of his chimney. "Now he knows," says Sarah, "and he will come back for the others." He did come back, and even brought a friend, and the friend went away and brought a relative, and among them they made a hearty meal, over which they twittered and chattered and exclaimed, stopping every now and then to put their heads on one side and examine Lottie and Sarah. Lottie was so delighted that she quite forgot her first shocked impression of the attic. In fact, when she was lifted down from the table and returned to earthly things as it were, Sarah was able to point out her many beauties in the room, which she herself would not have suspected the existence of. "It is so little and so high above everything," she said, "that it is almost like a nest in a tree. The slanting ceiling is so funny. See, you can scarcely stand up at this end of the room. and when the morning begins to come, I can lie in bed and look right up into the sky through that flat window in the roof. It is like a square patch of light, and if the sun is going to shine, little pink clouds float about, and I feel as if I could touch them. And if it rains, the drops patter and patter as if they were saying something nice. Then if there are stars, you can lie and try to count how many go into the patch. It takes such a lot. And just look at that tiny rusty grate in the corner. If it was polished and there was a fire in it, just think how nice it would be. You see, it's really a beautiful little room. She was walking round the small place, holding Lottie's hand and making gestures which described all the beauties she was making herself see. She quite made Lottie see them too. Lottie could always believe in the things Sarah made pictures of. You see, she said, there could be a thick, soft blue Indian rug on the floor, and in that corner there could be a soft little sofa with cushions to curl up on, and just over it could be a shelf full of books so that one could reach them easily, and there could be a fur rug before the fire and hangings on the wall to cover up the whitewash and pictures. They would have to be little ones, but they could be beautiful. And there could be a lamp with a deep rose-colored shade and a table in the middle with things to have tea with, and a little fat copper kettle singing on the hob. And the bed could be quite different. It could be made soft and covered with lovely silk coverlet. It could be beautiful. And perhaps we could coax the sparrows until we made such friends with them that they would come and peck at the window and ask to be let in. "Oh, Sarah," cried Lottie, "I should like to live here." When Sarah had persuaded her to go downstairs again, and, after setting her on her way, had come back to her attic, she stood in the middle of it and looked about her. The enchantment of her imaginings for Lottie had died away. The bed was hard, covered with a dingy quilt. The whitewashed wall showed its broken patches. The floor was cold and bare, the grate was broken and rusty, and the battered footstool tilted sideways on its injured leg, the only seat in the room. She sat down on it for a few minutes and let her head drop into her hands. The mere fact that Lottie had come and gone away again made things seem a little worse, just as perhaps prisoners feel a little more desolate after visitors come and go, leaving them behind. "It's a lonely place," she said. "Sometimes it's the loneliest place in the world." She was sitting in this way when her attention was attracted by a slight sound near her. She lifted her head to see where it came from, and if she had been a nervous child, she would have left her seat on the battered footstool in a great hurry. A large rat was sitting up on his hind quarters and sniffing the air in an interested manner. Some of Lottie's crumbs had dropped upon the floor, and their scent had drawn him out of his hole. He looked so queer, and so like a gray-whiskered dwarf or gnome that Sarah was rather fascinated. He looked at her with his bright eyes as if he were asking a question. He was evidently so doubtful that one of the child's queer thoughts came into her mind. "I dare say it's rather hard to be a rat," she mused. "Nobody likes you. People jump and run away and scream out, 'Oh, a horrid rat.' I shouldn't like people to scream and jump and say, 'Oh, a horrid Sarah,' the moment they saw me, and set traps for me, and pretend they were dinner. It's so different to be a sparrow, but nobody asked this rat if he wanted to be a rat when he was made. Nobody said, 'Would you rather be a sparrow?'" She had sat so quietly that the rat had begun to take courage. He was very much afraid of her, but perhaps he had a heart like the sparrow, and it told him that she was not a thing which pounced. He was very hungry. He had a wife and a large family in the wall, and they had had frightfully bad luck for several days. He had left the children crying bitterly and felt he would risk a good deal for a few crumbs, so he cautiously dropped upon his feet. "Come on," said Sarah. "I'm not a trap. You can have them, poor thing. Prisoners in the Bastille used to make friends with rats. Suppose I make friends with you." And so, my friends, we're going to stop here. And I'm sure you must know already that Sarah makes friends with the rat. Because Sarah makes friends everywhere she goes. She is such a sweet child, such a sweet soul. And the story gets better from here. So we made it through the saddest part of the story. And we'll ask the angels to clear away any remnants of sadness or sorrow that might be with you, not even related to the story, but in whatever way they're showing up for you. And I affirm that for you and for our little Sarah, things are going to get better soon. Brighter days are ahead. So you rest well. I wish you sweet dreams. I say a prayer for your brighter tomorrows. Know that you are a blessing. Know that you are loved, and I am grateful for our time together.